you can go through your life and almost convince yourself that you hadn't made a mistake. I always think like enjoy those milestones. So if you achieve a milestone, try and set aside some time to enjoy it. It was hard. I'm not going to lie, it was hard. It was a massive commitment. To have the MasterChef title, it gives people almost like that. That's like a approval mark.
Welcome, Stephen. Thank you for being here, pal.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm honoured to be here with an official MasterChef.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 10 years ago now, so I'm still milking that achievement a little bit.
I'm sure, yeah, because you was 26 at the time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, quite a young age to
get
awarded that, right?
That's right. I mean, that was basically like, a lot of things were going on in my career at that sort of time. And no, it's one of my proudest achievements.
I'm sure it is. How did you get started? Like, what was your passion into becoming a chef?
Yeah, so I tell this story a lot that I always wanted to be a footballer. That was my main focus at school. I wasn't really like an academic kid. I wouldn't say I misbehaved or I was like troublesome, but it was always in my report like could do better. It was just I didn't really want to focus and knuckle down on that side of things, and football kind of took over my life, to be honest, when I was a young kid. But I think as you move your way through the ranks, as my son's going through at the moment, you become like a smaller fish in a bigger pond every time you step up. And I think you realise like every kid wants to be a footballer, and I had to choose a different career path quite quickly. But I've always enjoyed eating, and I think I always joke by saying I just wanted to cut out the middleman, so to speak. But I did enjoy like cooking at home with my parents. So my mum would always do things like the Christmas dinner, or like, you know, when we had family over, we tend to be the family house. So people would come to us, and I'd be more than happy to help her prepare food, anything to get me out of washing up, to be honest.
Nice. How old were you when you actually got into like your industry?
So 16, or maybe a bit younger. Again, both my parents were in the industry already, so that was a massive help.
Fair.
Although neither of them wanted me to be a chef, I think they saw the amount of hours that it takes to be in that industry. Ultimately, they wanted me to go to university, and that would have made them proud. But I feel like I've made them proud now with the route I've taken. And maybe there was something in there, like from me, almost like proving them wrong, because
you were passionate about following that path.
And don't get me wrong, there's been like nights where I'd literally like cry myself to sleep, thinking like, why am I a chef? Why am I doing this? Why am I missing out on all those things? But you know, there was something in me that was just like, no, I'm going to prove them wrong, that I can do this, and I will come out the other side a better person.
Yeah, that's incredible.
But yeah, so 15, I'd say my dad set up a couple of work experience weeks for me. I think mainly to try and put me off the industry.
Yeah,
but if anything, it kind of, I think at the end of the week, I was like, Dad, I absolutely love it. You know, It was just that there's a lot of correlations between football and being a chef, I think. I do honestly think that the more you put into it, the more you get out. Again, like with football and training, in terms of like the way the team's set up, like you're working as a team to get one goal. Like you can take a chef out of that team, and it will be completely detrimental to the end result. So you need to work together, and you need to be. You're only as strong as the weakest chef in your team, and that's the same in football as well. So
but they say you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yes, yeah.
And to be fair, like, you know, what you've described there is, I think, in life in general for most industries, is you've got to be united in what you do. You've all got to be pulling together, and it's got to be a team effort. And whether that's in sport or your field or even my field, it's like it's all the same thing.
Yeah, but not every job you do work as a team though as well. There could be like some quite individual.
Yeah,
working, and I feel like I was more of a team player. Like that's where I saw myself as working. Through the hard times, there's nothing better. I think it's like going through like a difficult service and coming out the other side and thinking we did that.
Yeah,
and
it's, especially in your field as well, because like I know it's long hours. I know like it can be a lot of pressure. There's a lot going on. So being united in that front is probably really important. The last thing you could want to be doing is fighting each other.
100%.
Even though that's probably what happens anyway in the...
Yeah, I think there's this like misconception because since Gordon Ramsay's come along that every kitchen there's pans flying about and, every other word's a swear word. But I think the industry's moved a lot, along quite far from those days. Obviously, there's still going to be kitchens that do that, but I would say we're quite methodical in our approach, and we treat our chefs with respect. We kind of detail what is required from them, almost like, again, the way football's moved on. Alex Ferguson is the Gordon Ramsay of his time. He didn't have a lot of tactics, so to speak, but his main passion was like getting every ounce of energy out of those players. Yeah. And he managed to do that, whereas now you've got managers like Pep Guardiola who are doing things differently, more methodically and like within reason, and they've kind of got that ethos and process, I think they call it. Yeah. Trust the process. So that's how we are in kitchens now as well.
So you started doing work experience at 15, and literally at 16 years old, what happened from there for you?
From there, the work experience was with a chef known as Paul Rankin and Gary Rhodes, the late Gary Rhodes. Wow. So my dad couldn't have chosen two better chefs to pair me with to get me involved with the industry, so to speak. I think he wanted to put me off, but they did anything but that. And then after those 2 weeks, I was like, Dad, I really want to do this. And it was around the time where they started modern apprenticeships. So you must know about those again with your career sector.
And so they had that sort of apprenticeship.
It was like one of the very first ones. And what appealed to me, because I obviously had two routes. I could go to college, and the college would be very generic. You'd be with 20 other students, but you'd just be ticking off subjects, so to speak, but not fine dining. I knew I wanted to do fine dining. I knew I wanted to, to move my way up to that Michelin level. And I felt the best way to do that was to be working alongside a head chef. He'd do the majority of the training, and then an assessor would come in once a month and kind of tick off those modules.
Right. And what type of work would you have to do right at the beginning of your career when you're working in like these sort of restaurants?
Yeah, I'd say it was known as a trainee chef, so I was limited to 40 hours a week. Okay. I know that sounds crazy now, limit to 40, but I couldn't work any more than that.
To some extent, it's probably a bit healthier.
Yeah, and we kind of do the same in the restaurant at the moment. We don't work crazy hours, but with the more junior chefs, we try and give them like 4 or 6 shift contracts just to ease them in after school. But it's really like any career. Like the more you take on and learn and want to do more, the more they give you. So if you can't do something, you won't probably get that job again. And they keep going through that job list, and if you can't do any of the jobs, you're pretty much out of the kitchen. So it's finding jobs that you can do and then trying to almost like juggle with the job. So what job then can we throw at Steve that he can do? And then tomorrow when he comes in, he's now got 3 or 4 jobs on his list rather than just the one.
It's kind of like, building confidence for themselves, for the people around them. Because I was listening to another podcast recently, and the guy was saying how he started off like literally just washing dishes, and he had to be committed to that before
they could see that. I've seen that in kitchens. I've seen that as a career path. The chef wants to see the level of commitment, and a lot of great chefs have started off in pot wash.
Yeah.
But I guess my luck, so to speak, was I had to actually learn to do the modern apprenticeship. I'm not sure. I think being on a modern apprenticeship, I was paid a lot less than everyone else. That benefited the company in a sense, but I did have to complete the modules. Or I'd have to reset the modules. So it was really in the benefit of the company that I was working for to get the best from me. But it was literally just jobs like chopping chives, peeling onions, chopping onions, peeling carrots. Nothing glamorous, but the beauty.
Necessary.
Yeah, the beauty I had was with the modules that I had to complete. They could be like filleting a fish, cooking a fish, filleting poultry. So I was learning that side as well, because I think if you just leave school and go into a kitchen, that side of things might come a little bit later,
right?
Naturally, because you're just given jobs that you can do and kind of work your way up to. And that's all to do with the expense of the produce. Just again, like if you're a builder, if there's something expensive, you're not going to give it to a junior member of the team that can potentially mess it up. So, and that's why a lot of the jobs are carrots, onions, and things like chives, herbs.
And you know, through your growth, like you were talking about modules, what do you feel like benefited you the most? Was it kind of like the studying of it, or the actual experience and the practicality of doing it? What benefited you the most?
For me, it was definitely the practical side of things. I'm a visual learner.
Yeah.
I don't read a lot of books, as my missus will testify. I'm more of a film guy, or getting into things like podcasts and learning, you know, like while I'm driving. But at that time, it was all about seeing my executive chef do something and then me replicating it. And what was really good about it, it was then on the menu as well. So instead of at college where it would just almost be, you know, for test purposes, this is how we're going to break down a chicken. At the restaurant, I could see him break down the chicken, and then I could see the finished dish. You know, do you know what I mean? And that for me was a massive, head start for me in my career, I felt. But it might not be the same for everyone. You've got to kind of work out how you learn yourself.
Absorb information.
You know, already we're talking. Already, if you're not good with books, then don't start reading lots of books and think it's going to change you.
Yeah.
I think you just got to be honest with what you can do and what you can't, and there'll be your life path ahead of you.
Yeah, I really understand that. I'm exactly the same as you, by the way. Everything I do, it has to be quite practical. It's almost like I prefer learning on the job, even though it can be a bit more painful that way. You know, you end up making a few more mistakes.
But mistakes are so important, I think, especially earlier on in your career. Those mistakes define you, and you know, because you learn more from it.
Yeah,
it's just whether you avoid getting a sack.
That's right.
How big a mistake it was.
How big of a mistake. Yeah, because I've heard that kind of saying that success is built on loads of failures, and I think that's for anyone that's kind of gone through that entrepreneurial journey. It's just you make so many little mistakes all the time, but I think it's just about constantly persevering and like enduring all the time, because a lot of people might make a mistake and be like, oh, do you know what, this ain't working, and then they beat themselves up so much they end up taking a complete U-turn, where I think the real success happens when you kind of go beyond that.
Yeah. And it's knowing that you've made a mistake as well.
Yeah,
I think, because sometimes
it's very important.
You can go through your life and almost convince yourself that you hadn't made a mistake, you know, and you're almost, we called it like hugging a tree, you know, like you've created something and now you're going to stick to that and you're going to defend that. Whereas, do you know what I mean? If I cook a dish for you and you could criticise it and I'll be like, no, you're wrong. That's the way I wanted it to be. Yeah. That's me defending the dish. I think to get better at what you want to do, we need to like eat the dish together and really rip it apart and be like, that's wrong, this could be better. That way you're getting a really good overview of how to make the dish better and how to progress it.
I think the difficulty is critiquing things without taking it
personally.
Really personally.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to differentiate them two things because we've done it.
Yeah.
We're quite emotionally bonded to
that separation. It does take a while, because I remember when I was a head chef at, I think I was 25. I was head chef, so my first head chef job, which sounds young, but I'd already been in a kitchen for 9 years then. Of course. And so I was the head chef, and I remember looking at TripAdvisor, and you know, 90% of it was all positive, and there'd be one comment that would just be like, "Who does this chef think he is? Like, dishes are rubbish, blah blah blah." And I would like, that'd be one of the nights where I said I was like crying myself to sleep. I'd just be like, "Why am I doing this?"
Don't you think it's mad though how like that, putting that into perspective?
Yeah,
you look at that tiny little negative moment out of the, and we almost assume, okay, I expect this.
Yeah.
This is exactly what it should be. But because I've got this, it's almost like turmoil.
Yeah,
it's like you know, I don't think everybody's gonna appreciate, you know, what you do. And to be fair, they might have caught you on a bad day. You know, you can't perform 100% of the time.
Exactly, and I think it's important to differentiate yourself, because, again, going back to when I was first a head chef, I didn't really see it. It was just, the feeling was all me. It was all about me. I was quite selfish, you know. And actually, it's a team performance. And I'm not trying to say like that review was bad because of the team. I'm trying to say actually we can work better as a team to get a better review, and not to take it personally. I think, like you said earlier, like differentiate yourself from the product and yourself and your team is so important. And that way you can almost take a bird's eye view of what you're doing and get better. If you can criticise yourself, then I think that's really, and in a constructive way. I don't mean
definitely
beat yourself up after work all the time. But, there's sometimes as well where the guest just doesn't get what you're about. But I think what I learned was, a couple of things actually. What I loved doing to try and help me was looking at my favourite restaurants' reviews. So it could be the Fat Duck. So go on TripAdvisor for the Fat Duck, one of the best restaurants in the world. Bad reviews on there as well. It surprised me as well. But like every restaurant gets bad reviews.
Yeah, of course.
Also, looking at artists, art and food are quite similar. If you go to
your art, your food, which is fantastic. By the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I just I can see there's a real passion behind the kind of
visual
food,
side.
The visual side,
and that was from a chef, Raymond Blanc, that I worked with, and he was all about bringing the food to life and making it look appetizing, because I think you eat with your eyes first. But what I was saying with the artist is like, you could think this piece of art over here is the best piece of art you've ever seen, and I could come along and be like, well, yeah, it's okay. And that's the same with food. You like scrambled eggs for breakfast. So do I actually. But some other person might be like, actually, I don't like eggs. Like, is that your personal preference, or is it actually like, or has the chef cooked the scrambled eggs wrong?
It's funny you say that, because the other day somebody said they didn't quite like one of the episodes of the podcast, and I took it a bit personally. I did ask them for feedback and constructive. They just said I wasn't like, I didn't favour the guest, which I'm okay with, because like I've had such a dynamic a bunch of people on here so far. But the same day, somebody said they did like that person. So it is all speculative, and I don't think everybody's gonna like everything that you do. There's always something there for somebody. That's kind of how I've perceived the situation now. So I think it's like the same in what you do is, you're gonna, for 100 people, they're all gonna have 100 different opinions of the style of it, the taste of it.
It's just funny that you mentioned 100, because my next thing was like our kind of business ethos is hitting the 90 to 95%. If we hit that, 5 or 10 out of 100 don't get it, then that's absolutely fine, because I think with anything successful, you're always going to get that element of people that don't. To get 100%, it means you're pleasing everyone, and then you haven't got an actual model, so to speak, because you can't please everyone.
It's not possible. I think if you're being true to your values or your core values, or even your brands, it's very difficult, because if you're actually aiming to try and make it all about other people, then you lose the entity in itself. Right?
That's right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Just things like music and food. You could have some people say they want music while they're eating. Some people don't. What do you do? Do you play music quietly, and then people will be like, "Oh, it'd be great if they could turn it up." Great if they could turn. And that's just one element of a dining experience that is often touched.
What do you do?
We play music. It's quite loud. I wouldn't say over loud, but again, some of the comments could be, wish the music was a little bit lower. But for me, I like the atmosphere. The energy, especially. The tables are quite spaced out at Etch, so we want to make it like modern fine dining. There's no tablecloths. We want to be welcoming guests as if they're coming into our home, and almost take away the pretense of fine dining.
Because that makes that's normally what you see is like the pretense side of things.
And I think it's there. Like I'm not knifing fine dining in the back. The special occasions. For my 30th birthday, I went to the Waterside Inn, and I loved the fact that it had tablecloths and a waiter pulled out a chair for me. Like, it was so special. But would I want that on a Wednesday night and just eating out with the missus? Probably not. It'd probably be a bit too much.
Well, I think this is you just putting your spin on how you see it in your field. I mean, you've been in it for a long time, so I think you've probably gone through that process of like taking the good of what you like, and you've created your own persona of how your business.
That's a great way to put it. That's exactly like when I look at my career, I've literally just taken elements from the chefs I've worked with, tweaked them into my own recipes and my own vision, and I just love cooking food that I love to eat. And I mean, especially with Etch, it evolves a lot, so we only keep a dish on the menu for 4 weeks, and that's kind of just me as a chef. I want my chefs underneath me to learn as much as possible, just as much as I did when I was a young chef.
And how do you find it with staff and like the responsibility and like the pressure of running a restaurant. What's that like for you?
Yeah, we call it team where I work. I'm really like against the word like staff. Little things like that, just because, I don't know, I want them to feel part of my journey as well, and they can come to me with anything. But it is hard, like the hospitality industry, like when you try and sell it to someone, oh, by the way, you're going to be working until 10, 11 o'clock at night, probably going to be every Friday, Saturday as well. You know, we're asking a massive commitment from people that want to work with us. But what we can promise is like an exciting job that isn't the same every day. You're interacting with our guests, who are lovely. Like, I think people get worried, like if they came for a job and being like, oh, am I going to be confronted by a horrible guest? But that's quite rare.
Yeah,
I think generally, like our team has such great interaction with our guests, and to be honest, from a front of house point of view, all I'm looking for is personality and ambition, wanting to learn. And to be honest, the similar characteristics from the chef's team. I mean, sometimes we have some great CVs coming in, but do they want to adapt to our philosophy and our ethos? Sometimes not. And again, I keep bringing it back to football. It's, you know, sometimes you can have that ego in the team that overpowers it, and it's not right. Sometimes you'd rather have that young, energetic chef that wants to come in and learn as much as possible, and will commit to your philosophy.
Yeah, do you know what? That's a very true statement, to be fair, because I think what I found along the journey is your values need to match their values, and if they do, it always generally works out. But if somebody has different values to you, then generally there's a little bit of a divide. It starts getting a little bit tense because people have different intentions in mind, which is fine. But it's your business. You've created your values of what your business requires and what it doesn't require. So therefore, it needs a certain type of person to be able to deliver your model.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I perceive it.
100%, and especially if they come from somewhere that doesn't have similar values to your business. And I'm not saying there's good and bad values out there, but just the style of food, for example, like your philosophy, the way you serve, the way you cook, can be very different between restaurants. And I think the average person at home doesn't realise like that diversity. And I almost think could almost be a bit detrimental to a chef's career early on now, because there's so much information out there. You're almost spoilt for choice, you know, in terms of how to cook a carrot, for example. There's probably 100 recipes. You know, different chefs would do something different. And when I was training, there's only like a handful of top chefs in the country. Everyone had Gordon Ramsay's cookbook, you know.
It's very specific.
It was.
Yeah.
And
which made it simpler to understand the process of it all.
Because I'm always saying to my head chefs, I'm always like, why are these guys coming in and they're not doing any research, you know, like on a recipe? Because you've got it at your fingertips. I mean, the bones of the recipe will always be the same between chefs. It's just that final finesse or that final tweak. And it always confuses me, like, we didn't have internet when I was training to be a chef.
Oh, really?
You know, and I've already said I'm not a book learner, so I was literally looking through cookbooks as picture books, and that's kind of how I learned. Or I'd have to do it physically and be like, chef, can I make this? Can I do that? I really want to learn, you know, like to make a hollandaise sauce. Can you show me? And that's what I was like as a chef. Can you show me this? Can you show me that?
Yeah. And
I think that's how I progressed in my career.
So did you just stay at the same restaurant before you started your own restaurant, or?
Yes. So again, my career then is split down into different stages. So up until MasterChef, which was 2013, 10 years ago, I already had 10 years experience as a chef, working in probably 5 or 6 different restaurants.
Oh, okay.
And the last one was South Lodge. So I kind of, if I look back on my career, I always say like the first 5 years was quite volatile. I was kind of switching between restaurants. I didn't really know my place. I was a little bit of a cheeky chappy, got sacked from a job. You know, I learned a few life lessons, but also it's so... And I said again to my head chef, so you've got to look back at your time between like 16 and 22 or 16 and 21. That's 5 years. 16 and 21 is 5 years. There's a lot going on. There's a lot in your family, there's a lot in your friend groups. Are they going to university? Are they doing this? Have they found a part? Are we having a weekend together? This sort of thing. And that's what I call like a volatile sort of time in my career in terms of learning. But I did learn how to cook. That's the most important thing I took from that 5 years. The next 5 years of my career was then working with the best chef I worked with, which was Matt Gillen at South Lodge. He went on to get a Michelin star. And being part of that team was more like the finesse. He taught me technique. He taught me real fine dining, but in a fun and creative way. I mean, he's probably one of the most technical chefs in the country. And I needed that. So that was my discipline. So those 5 years, I didn't really speak to my friends. I was working.
Locked in.
Yeah, I was probably working 80 hours every week. I was fully committed. And
how do you like, because obviously, I had Thomas on here, and I'm not leading this to anything specific, but how do you like operate on that many hours? Like, just because what he spoke about before is there's like a lot of drugs in there. But I know people drink a lot as well. How do you, because these are long hours, and I used to do a lot of long hours when I was younger, but I wouldn't say continuous 80 hours every week.
It's sustainable.
It's not
sustainable, but I think the thing there is, it's a 5 day a week operate. We had 2 days off. Oh, wow. I know, like talking about it black and white. Wow, we had 2 days off, but one of those days would straight be sleep.
Yeah,
and then the other day would be just catching up on things around the house, like washing laundry, like planning the week ahead. It was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was hard. It was a massive commitment. And not every week was 80. Some weeks could have been less, probably more 60. It's still long, but
yeah. Of course it is.
Again, it's fortunate. So the hotel was South Lodge Hotel, 5-star. The restaurant was in the kitchen. It was the first restaurant in the kitchen in the country. So it's called the Pass Restaurant. But you talk about like drugs and alcohol and stuff. Absolutely, I've worked in restaurants where it's been rife, but here, the beauty of working at a place like South Lodge is it's in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, okay.
I think if you're working in city restaurant, city centre, you go, you could finish work and on the way home have a couple of beers, blah, blah, blah. But here it's literally, I had to drive there, had to drive back. At the end of the week, we did all have a beer together, just one beer, but we're so zonked out, like we just all wanted to get home. But it was more like a discipline, and it taught me so much from working there. But it was no distraction. Like, for example, there's no windows in the kitchen. You can see that as a bad thing or a good thing. I saw it as a good thing. Literally, so? No distractions.
No distractions.
Like, I talk about like those 5 years. There's no distractions. Like, I was fully, blinkers on, just focused on getting the most out of what I wanted from there. And in those 5 years, I went from chef de partie to being Matt's sous chef. I won Sussex Young Chef of the Year. I won MasterChef. I had 2 kids. I got married. So I did those 5 years of what I look back on my career as like my 5 years to set myself up for the rest of my life. And I think we spoke about it before the podcast, is to set yourself up. You could spend 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. It's about how much time you want to put into it. And I've always been like, when you said about the 80 hours a week, I'd rather do 80 hours a week for like five years than 60 hours a week for 7 years.
Yeah. Or like 50 or like 20, 30 years, yeah.
And that's the way I just look at it. And yeah, you're right, I missed out on a lot of things. I remember turning up to my cousin's wedding after they got married and just there for the after party. And, I missed out on family events and Christmases, for example. I missed out every Christmas.
Yeah. And I think the difficulty in that is this missing out thing is, if you're kind of doing something that you're really passionate about, that you're always going to have to make some sacrifices, not forever, but for a period of time. And then the question is, are you actually missing out, or are you actually just following your dreams towards something that you're really passionate about? And I think, I used to feel exactly what you're talking about. I'm missing out on this or I'm missing out on that, but you have to put it into perspective is, no, actually, I'm really following my passion of what I want to do versus, because you can't do everything.
You can't.
And if you want to be good at something, it's about putting that full attention into that.
The way I describe it is you've got 2 things, and we have, or 2 different types of people. You've got ones that are doing a job and one that are working towards a career. And we have a mix of those at Etch, for example. You know, we have some university students that help us out as a job. But you know what's great about them is that their energy, and they want to be there. You know, they're not just coming in and doing like a 9 to 5 clock in, clock out.
There's a lot of enthusiasm.
But they're learning some skills. Are they going to be waiters for the rest of their life? Absolutely not. They're doing a degree. But they are coming in and doing a job. And then we've got some people there, or the majority of people there, that are there for the career. You know, they're using us as a way to learn, better themselves, put more hours in, get more out of it in the end. And
so you need that balance, right?
You do.
And again, I heard another saying in the past that nobody starts at the finish line. So it's like everybody starts somewhere.
Where is the finish line?
Yeah, well, that's very true.
Yeah, you must get that feeling as much as I do. I'm never happy.
No, I know.
And as soon as I achieve one goal, I've already got the next goal on the run.
I have to keep reminding myself. Of what I've done up to date, you know, and I am proud of myself in a humble way, because I think where I came from, I look at the whole journey and put it all into perspective. So I think it's, you know, and I think it's really important for everybody to do that, by the way, not just me. I'm just
reflection, I think, is so important.
Very important, because for like what you're talking about, we're always striving for something else, and then in the end you don't actually appreciate anything you're doing, because you're always looking at the next thing and the next thing. And that becomes very toxic and unhealthy, because in the end it's like nothing you do is actually good enough.
I always think, like, enjoy those milestones. So if you achieve a milestone, try and set aside some time to enjoy it. Yeah. And you know, for me it's like having a cigar. Mainly because it takes I don't do it often.
Love that.
It takes a while to smoke a cigar and just reflect. I just call it reflection, and whether that's with my team or on my own, just having that time just to actually take in that moment. And also when you look back, you're almost like, actually, I did take in that moment. You know, it didn't just fly past. You've slowed time down. And that's again, I don't really even like smoking a cigar, to be honest. I just do it to slow down time, because I'm just chilling out and just relaxing. Yeah. And because honestly, some of my days or some of the weeks are just flying by so quickly.
When you're so busy, time just goes, zaps. Absolutely zaps. So no, that's an interesting insight into like how you can appreciate the little things, you know.
Yeah.
And so what would you say like the biggest challenge for you in running your restaurant has been so far?
There's been a lot of challenges. Right now it's the cost of living crisis. That's affecting us the most. But I don't blame our guests for that. We're all in the same boat. We all have to make changes to the way we spend money. But it's something that's, you know, can make or break the restaurant moving forward. Other challenges in the past we've spoke about it, staffing levels or getting the team in, getting, you know, the right amount. We've obviously had COVID in there. I don't know, like, well, I see these challenges as like ways to grow. You know, even though they are challenging and at times have been hard, you know, if we can get through this, we can get through anything. And that's kind of the way I've looked at it. But even like opening a restaurant to begin with, how do you do that? It's so difficult. Like, you got to bear in mind is my background is being a chef, being in a kitchen, cooking meat or fish or vegetables. And then all of a sudden I've got to put together a business plan, get shareholders involved, get a site, get builders to kit it out. You know, I would say opening Etch was the most difficult thing I did at that time. And then we expanded it 2 years ago. I'd say that was crazy. So
how did you expand it?
So we're right on the edge of we're on the edge of Hove, but our building is beautiful. It used to be a bank, so it's a 5-story building. We have the bottom two, so the ground floor and the basement. And I literally decided, because next door came available, I was like, right, we're going to knock into next door. So we've got 2 different landlords, 2 different buildings, 5 stories across the 2, like structural engineers, because we wanted it to be, when you came into the restaurant, we didn't want it to look like 2 buildings. So it's got...
You opened it all up.
2 metre or 2.5 metre gaps, basically, which from a structural engineer point of view was like crazy. And then not to mention like solicitor fees, legal costs, having about like 3 different electricity meters, you know, all these challenges that I kind of didn't see. And then while we're doing the building work, we had the petrol crisis. I think back then, 2 years ago, Supplies of, I think, wood were through the roof.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, plasterboard and stuff like that. So that single-handedly was the biggest thing I've done, or the biggest challenge I've had in my life to date.
It's amazing how, because my friend's done exactly the same thing. They own a boxing gym around the corner, and they bought the lease next door, and then they opened it up. It's amazing how like all of these things end up just working out for the best in the end.
Yeah,
like all these little opportunities, they present themselves, and then you have to go a bit through hell to get there. But once you come out the other end,
you learn so much. Like I never would have thought, because it just seems like a simple job. Oh, we're just going to knock through to next door, but honestly, the amount of challenges involved with doing that.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest challenge for it, because when we had Etch to begin with, there was no team. You know, we were literally looking for a site. We got the site and then kitted it out. The challenge this time was not only were we knocking through to next door, but we had a certain window to operate in, because we're still paying the team
100%.
money. We're taking bookings, so we had to have an end point, so the bookings were here. And that's what was creating the stress. You must know from the building side of things that to be put under that sort of pressure isn't good for anyone. And we're having the builders there until like 1 o'clock in the morning some nights just to get the job done. Yeah, really. In the end, they weren't like that from the beginning. But I'll tell you, like the last 2 weeks, we had to get it done, and we just had to throw everything at it.
Well, the thing is, you've got to minimise the disruption, because ultimately it's about you running the business and focusing on the business. While it's nice to have this project of expansion, you know, the ultimate priority is delivering the service, the goods to your clients. So, I understand that, because we had to move offices a couple of times, and, you know, that can be quite detrimental when you've got to operate and you've got to deliver a service to
at the same time.
So it's very hard to kind of squeeze everything in. So, like, working till 1 a.m. is like almost the only practical way you can kind of like glide through it.
Short-term pain for long-term gain.
Yeah,
is the way we kind of looked at it.
And actually, what was it like for COVID for you guys?
It was 0 to 100. So it's either, I mean, we made the decision not to do the takeaway boxes or the finish at home, mainly because I've got three kids now. My wife works with adults with learning disabilities, so she was seen as like a key worker. Well, she is a key worker. So she was out working, and I was there to look after the kids. So it was a role reversal, so to speak. But what was actually lovely about COVID was I actually got to spend a lot of time with my family. I was then cooking at home for not just us, but my parents just lived down the road as well. So we're kind of taking it in turns to cook meals and send it down. But from the business point of view, I just said to the team, look, we've got this option to do the finish at home boxes. Does anyone want to take it on? Because we've got that brand and that name and that facility. But the team kind of just went into different roles themselves as well, just like I did. I was the stay-at-home dad. So the restaurant literally was just gathering dust during that time. When we opened, obviously the demand for restaurants was just through the roof. So when we went through whatever it was, 2 or 3 months of nothing, to then 2 or 3 months of 7 days a week, lunch and dinner. And I'm so proud of the team for doing that. And it was hard. It was hard. Like, sure it was. Your body isn't used to it. You know, having 3 months, like being a stay-at-home 100%. Dad where I'm going to bed early and cycling and doing things with the kids, to then working, you know, 5, 6, 7 days a week and doing lunch and dinner was difficult. But we had to do that for survival. And that's kind of everyone will have their own stories in COVID, you know, even chefs. What were they doing? You know, I was doing recipes online, like just to pass time, and I didn't really enjoy that. I think I said that to you before the podcast as well. It just got me stressed. I got so many comments on the recipes, like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? Well, it's my recipe, you know. I'm sharing with you something that I do, and I just thought, you know what, I'm not cut out for this.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying earlier about there's so much information out there. There's 100 ways to do this one thing now, so everything gets a little bit overly complicated.
Yeah, or overanalyzed, I think. You've got to take it for what it is, you know. If someone gives you a recipe, you can choose to follow it or not, or just enjoy it. But also the beauty of it is not every recipe is the same. I think that's really important, you know, from a creative point of view, and also from a food enjoyment. You know, it'd be pretty boring if every restaurant had the same dishes, starters, mains and dessert, wouldn't it? All done the same way, I think.
Yeah. it's about you and the spin that you put on it and the character that you put into your food, as opposed to it, you know. And it goes back to that kind of like trying to please everyone. It's about your mark, not necessarily making it about everybody else's mark.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find that, but that's the difficulty, is that within that territory comes things, people liking all your stuff and people not everybody liking stuff, right? So that's always and not everybody likes everything. So,
but I took a lot from COVID. Like, honestly, the amount of time I spent with my kids was invaluable.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Obviously, learning about the recipes, I didn't enjoy doing that as much. I like doing the occasional ones. You know, I do want to have a recipe book, but like, you know, just the way it was all set up. It was set up with my phone on a tripod, editing everything. That was the bit that killed me. Was like editing things down just for like a 30-second video. I was just like, no, I can't be doing this.
I think it was important at that time to be able to put your mind into something, though.
It was 100%.
Whether it was your family or some sort of work that you were doing, you know, keeping that mind active, because I think a lot of people went into a little bit of a crisis through that time.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people struggled. There was a lot of deaths going on. And so, you know, rather than just sit there and just be in complete worry and panic, it was probably important to still keep that mind
There's even
active.
things now like just reassuring the team. You know, I had so many questions. You know, as soon as Boris Johnson gave a speech, I had like, you know, tens of messages coming through from my team. Just being like, what does this mean for us? What are we going to do? Can we open? Can we do this? Like, it wasn't just my worry; it was everyone's worry. And I was the leader of our team to take us through that period. And it was literally like navigating into a storm sometimes. It's just, can you remember like one of the rules was like you couldn't serve food or drink after 10 p.m. I'd forgotten about that until I'm talking now. Really? Can you remember that one? It was like, so as a restaurant you had to be closed before 10 p.m.
Before 10 p.m. That's interesting. No, I don't.
Yeah, and obviously we have a taster menu. It might have even been 9 p.m. or so. But like our taster menu generally takes 2 to 3 hours to enjoy. Not normally longer, and it's just like, right, so we had to do a shorter menu, start slightly earlier. But the team actually enjoyed it. What we learned from that is the team actually enjoyed it. And I think generally the guests, it was just the weirdest part of it in terms from a hospitality point of view was you're basically trying to rush the end of the meal. You know, it's almost like when you have friends round and you're like, right, that's dinner done. Do you want me to get you a taxi? That's literally the feeling at the end of the meal, and that's not nice.
No, not for
it feels
people
like
that want to relax.
Yeah, and that's not a nice end to the meal. But what a ridiculous rule that we had to adapt to. And
yeah, well, it looks like it's starting to come back a little bit as well. I've heard a couple of people have got it. And,
yeah, I think so.
So it'll be interesting to see how that all pans out.
Yeah.
So you've got Etch Restaurant.
Yep.
What's the? You've obviously got some other.
So I've got another restaurant in Richmond called the Bingham River House. It's part of a townhouse with lovely 15 bedrooms. So I run the restaurant for the owners, which is really nice. But what's lovely about that is the house backs onto the river. It's got like weddings and events there, which are really popular. And I just get on really well with the owners, to be honest. It's just a nice opportunity to showcase my food, but on an a la carte menu. We have 5 or 6 different starters, mains and desserts that guests can choose from. But also, I kind of guess it's a bit of a hybrid where you can actually make those choices into a 5 or 6 course taster menu as well. Whereas Etch is just taster menus from 4, 5, 7 or 9 courses.
Right.
And then we've also got the Tunnel Club, which opened in the start of the season, so the beginning of August. And that's at Brighton Hove Football Club, which I'm extremely proud of. And what's nice for me is it's almost like the full circle. So I think I said to you at the beginning I wanted to be a footballer, but failed. And now I'm cooking in a football stadium. So it's nice to be part of the football scene, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds super exciting. And that's literally only a couple of months ago.
Yes, yeah. So we cook every home game. It's for members that have signed up. So it's their premium package there at Brighton, where they get, again, an a la carte meal, snacks at half time, food at full time, unlimited drinks, heated leather seats.
Wow.
Have you had a padded seat?
Yeah.
They came and did a review and said it was like one of the best hospitality experiences that they've ever been to. So for me, you know, I've followed the padded seat for ages, and, you know, from a personal point of view, like following football, it was just so surreal that I'm that they're coming in and reviewing the experience that we've created at Brighton and Hove.
And obviously the reviews were quite good.
Yes, yeah, he loved it. It was amazing, lovely to meet him, and it's just a different demographic, really. And it's like two of my passions fused together, which is food and football. So for me, when Brighton approached me, it was a no-brainer. It was literally, I don't think I even thought about it. I was like, yes, yeah, absolutely.
How did they even find out about you?
I think they were just in for lunch one day, and they said if they could speak to me afterwards, and it kind of just escalated from there. It was actually a massive compliment it was Russell Wood, the commercial director, who just said, Steve, would love you to be part of the team.
Oh, wow.
And
No-brainer.
And, it's just so nice to be working or to be given that opportunity. But, Brighton's season has been phenomenal. Like, we were negotiating this contract, when Graham Potter had just been poached by Chelsea. So from a Brighton and Hove point of view, there'd been it felt like a bit of uncertainty at the football club, and that didn't bother me at all. But I did start thinking, is this Tunnel Club going to be then it could potentially be in the Championship? And I know that sounds really negative, but it was almost that feeling that Brighton had lost their best manager that they had ever had to Chelsea, and things could go either one or two ways, either up or down. And fortunately, De Zerbi came in, and he's taken them to a completely another level.
And do you know what? Forgive me, because I don't know enough about it, but it's all it's actually all moving in the right direction.
Brighton are in Europe now, which is for the first time, and that's what makes me even more proud. Put things into perspective. We opened Etch in 2017. Brighton were in the Championship.
Right, okay.
Now they're in the Premiership, in the Europa League, and they've got this Tunnel Club experience. So the restaurant itself is for 60 people, and it's in the tunnel. So where the players are lining up before they walk out, or if a player gets sent off, they walk through the tunnel into the change room. It doesn't sound glamorous, but you kind of have to see pictures of it, and you've got mirrored glass, so the players can't see into the restaurant, but all the restaurant guests can see the players about to walk out onto the pitch. So for them, at the weekend, it was against Liverpool, so they got to see Mo Salah and Van Dijk. There's lots of pictures of them doing that. They got really excited about seeing the players walking out, and then their seats are on the halfway line, so prime seats, and all hospitality is covered for them, so they don't have to think about anything.
And you get to go to some of the games yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's not included in the contract, but what's nice is that if I work there, I can just pop up the stairs and watch a bit of the match, and then come back down and finish off some food and stuff. So it's just really nice to be part of.
I'm sure it is
part of the club, and I love Football Manager as well. I don't know if you've ever played the game.
A long time ago.
That's kind of like my guilty pleasure, to just zone out and relax and take my mind off of food. So, to almost be part of that club, it just feels really special for me anyway.
Do you know what? It's funny with football, because I know some real people that are proper passionate, and they stress out massively. It's
like a religion. Yeah, it honestly is. They say it all the time, but
and do you know what? It just dictates your emotions all the time. If they win, it's absolutely that rush, that adrenaline, that excitement is absolutely amazing. But if they lose, it's like the end of the world. So I don't think I could deal with. I think I've got enough on my plate.
Do you know what it is? It's about the banter, with my mates. So my mates all support different teams. So if their team wins, I get annoyed if their team wins. But if they lose, I'll send some memes or some messages. And it's just it's not the loss that annoys me. It's more
the stick that
I know what's going to come through. And Laura, my wife, she's like, if we watch the match on TV. She's like, why are you still messaging your friends 2 hours after the match? I'm like, shaking. I'm like, yeah. It's just, I don't know. You can't really explain it. It's literally just being back at school, isn't it? On the playground. But the next day, it's all gone. It's all forgotten about. But
so year to date, what would you say the biggest achievement has been for you in your whole journey?
In my whole journey, I'd say it's lots of things. I mean, it's easy to say the MasterChef. MasterChef changed my career path onto the path it is now.
What was the initial opportunities you got from MasterChef?
Well, there's nothing guaranteed, which people find shocked. They're shocked by it. You don't win. I think the Australian MasterChef champion wins $500,000 or whatever it is. You don't win any money for the UK one, and you just get, I guess, from a CV point of view, it's great. A lot of brands want to work with you. So like I worked with a kitchen brand, a knife brand, and got to travel around Europe and like places like Dubai and the UK, kind of working with those companies promoting their brands while I was also looking for a restaurant. So it worked out really nicely. But also I think to have the MasterChef title, it gives people almost like that. That's like a approval mark. Yeah. You know, like if you're going out somewhere, it's the thing that can get you over the line. Like if you've got a Michelin star, you're like, well, yeah, we're going to go there instead of that restaurant. Or, oh, well, he won MasterChef. It's almost like that little bit of security for them to know that it's going to be a great experience. Almost like a TripAdvisor, so to speak, or Google review. Yeah. And that's what's really like helped me in my business. It'd be nice if I could have some more accolades to like overtake that one. But you know what? I'm really proud of it.
You're still a young man.
Yeah. So I was 26. I was 26 when I won, and I'm 37 now. Yeah. So
I mean, look, I'm not being funny, but you've got at least another 20, 30.
Oh, thanks, mate. So I'm not sure I've got energy for 20, 30 years, but
well, you might have a lot of people.
But I see that as well. I feel like I've got energy to put into things. I'd love to have a pub. That's kind of like the next milestone for me. But I don't see much more after that. I think just building the companies that I've got at the moment. I think I said to you we do events and dinner parties, which are really popular at the moment. So
who do you do those for generally?
Just to be honest, our normal restaurant guests. That's how it starts.
Okay.
But the dinner parties tend to be between 6 and 10 people. I would then go and cook at their home. And just make it like a really nice intimate experience for them. It could be a special occasion. It saves them having to travel to the restaurant, or it could be like we did canapes for a new housing company the other week. So they just like released a load of new multi-million-pound houses, and they had me doing the canapes with our team and bringing potential people, potential buyers in there. So.
And they go to that extent of accommodating them and looking for them.
Yeah, so
wow.
And it could be like a wedding. We've done weddings before, or anything, events. Like, I think we're quite niche. It's for people that love, they want that love of food.
Yeah.
Because we're not just like a side piece. We kind of like take a lot of the attention, and we want to do the best we can do.
Yeah.
But even from because we're not. If you said, Steve, can you come and cook a barbecue for me? The answer would be no, that's not what we do. We kind of do my style of food for your guests, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes sense, to be fair. And to be fair, like I can tell, because the passion of like your foods that you put up on Instagram, like you can see that there is a lot of heart that goes into that, and and that's probably what makes you kind of unique in what you do.
I think that's really important as well. Like with the fine dining market, there's quite a few different options out there now, and we have to have our own style and our own philosophy to be different. Like, what is it about us that's different from everyone else? And
you're unique.
And I think that evolution. We do 13 full menus a year, so we're changing it every four weeks fully. I think that's something that's really unique. Using the best British and European produce that we can get our hands on, but also just treating the food like with respect and treating it quite simply. Like a lot of the dishes are over like 2 or 3 flavours, so nothing crazy.
Have you got a dish that you love to cook in, like specifically? Is there like that one?
Well, I've got my signature dish. And it's hard to say it's a dish because it is literally like one of the first things you get at the restaurant. So even though the menu changes...
It's not the bread.
It is the bread. It's the Marmite bread and seaweed batter. Do I love cooking it? It's bloody hard work to make. But it's kind of synonymous with me.
So that's your signature?
That's my signature, yeah. Kind of. I don't know whether... Who said it's signature? Was it me or like just the guest? But kind of just fell in there because it is at the start of the meal.
And what's so special about it?
It's the combination of Marmite and seaweed, which is very unusual. I'd say I'm the only chef that's done that combination, which is quite rare with a food combination, but it is banging, and you need to try it. I didn't even think it would work, to be honest, because you've got two kind of similar ingredients in terms of they're both quite salty and umami flavours.
So how do you create...
How did that happen? Yeah, great question. So I wanted to do like bread. I wanted to do some funky bread at the beginning of the meal. Like bread is, when I started cooking, was literally just a bread roll with a butter in a packet. There was no love or attention in there. And as a young chef, there was more chefs like kind of putting focus and attention into that. into that bread and butter offering. So I kind of cooked 10 or 12 different breads, 10 or 12 different butters. I literally just had fun, like tasting them all together.
Experiment.
But, you know, like things like onion bread with bacon butter, I was like, that's going to be the win. You know, like something like that sounds like a normal combination. I was like, you know, that's going to be the winner. I never would have thought a Marmite bread with seaweed butter would. But you know what? It was just one of those eureka moments. It wasn't like a little bit better than all the other combinations. It was like stand out. And it was just by luck that it happened. Because methodically, if you'd like done it...
What happened? Like a jar of Marmite fell into the...
No, I mean, like it was always Marmite bread, but the Marmite bread I thought might go nicer with smoked butter or, you know, like I don't know, black pudding butter. Like I basically I need to find the sheet really. I should really show it on Instagram. But it was like 12... We
can actually add it to the podcast as well.
So it's like 12 different breads, 12 different butters, and then trying each bread with a different butter to find that combination.
Wow.
And then we're looking at like, do we do like more of a sourdough bread or this is like a brioche hybrid, the Marmite one. So it's just then diving into like, how do we then
do you know what
go down into that?
It's incredible. Like, I think that's like
just for one or two mouthfuls at the beginning of the meal. Quite a lot of time went into it, but this would have been in 2013 that time and development went into it. And that's what I love about cooking is you put the time into it, and then 10 years later we're still using the results of that experiment. So you are right, it is over the top like what we did, but then
worth it.
Saying that now, we must have made over 1 million Marmite bread, like more. Insane. Like I could probably again get the figures of that, like how much Marmite bread we've sold.
How did you know it was? How did you know it was like a? Obviously, you know you like the taste of it.
Yeah,
but was it just based on feedback from everyone else?
Well, it was. It was like mainly it was mainly me.
Was it?
But I don't know. I feel like my palate is good, and I think as a chef, you've got to have a good palate. I know what tastes right and what tastes wrong.
Okay.
And to be honest, that's what gets me in a lot of like, not arguments, but discussions with the team. It's, you know, I can go in and be like, that's what I want food to taste like. You know, for me, that epitomises my style. The thing I liked about the Marmite as well is like, it's a little bit nostalgic. I like my food to be like that.
100%.
Seaweed, again, like tying down to the Brighton coat. Like, for me, it was like more than just it being a banging flavour combination. It ties into like a lot of different things, and as well a unique combination that just ticked a third or fourth box. But yeah, it was purely my taste, and I feel like I said I could taste whether something's right or wrong for my palate, and that's important to say. You know, I'm not going into other chefs' restaurants saying that's wrong like Gordon Ramsay does. I just do it to my own restaurants and my own food.
Fair, yeah, that's fair. Because you mentioned like you know, when you're working with your staff, you know you've got a good palate, and do they always try and put their spin on things?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, we do leave it that open. I mean, to be honest, it's more the head chefs. I'd rather they did that, and then they use the resources of the team. So, for example, we've got a great sous chef called Joe who works with George, my head chef, and he will filter his ideas up through George. I think that's just the right way to do
innovate
it. Yeah, what I don't want to do is come into work and I've got 6 or 7 chefs coming to me with like, what about this, what about that, what about that? I think it needs to go through a process and
Definitely.
needs to go up through to George, the head chef, and then he decides whether it's right. It goes for a tasting to me, and I'm just brutally honest, and that's the hard thing about it is how. And again, I prefer to give that feedback to George rather than the team, because junior members of the team, I don't want to silver line it or sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
I literally just want to be honest. And George might say, I think you're wrong. It could be.
Oh, really?
We could then open it out to like a slightly wider audience. We've got, so our restaurant manager is one of the best sommeliers in the country. He's called Sam Wetherill, and he's got great palate as well, but he doesn't see it from a chef's point of view. So sometimes it's nice to get him involved in a tasting because he'd see it more from a guest. Or what he's probably thinking about is, what wine am I going to pair with this dish? Do you know what I mean? Like that side of things. So it's just using the right people.
Yeah.
And your respected people in your inner circle.
Yeah. Yeah. That
because sometimes you ask too many people. It's not a vote. It's not like, let's put this dish out to 20 people. That's not how we work. Like
no.
Because I'm not looking for the general consensus of the average population. I'm looking for people that want tasty food. You know, that's going to push the boundaries a little bit.
And it's finding that balance between, you know, being open-minded enough, but then also sticking to your guns.
Yeah.
And being like, no, this is what our our brand is. This is what our value. So it's always going back to the same thing all the time. Otherwise, it gets diluted.
It could be like a great dish. You're absolutely right. It could be a great dish, but it doesn't tick the boxes of our ethos or our philosophy. And from that dish, though, we call it a dish that's like never made it to the menu. We've got lots of them that haven't made it.
Really,
but they're really important.
Forbidden list.
Yeah, but they're really important dishes because from a dish you probably got 20 elements, well, not 20, it'd be 8 or 12 elements on that dish, and each one of those will have its own recipe. So time and energy has gone into that, but it's not saying an ingredient on that dish couldn't go onto another, like a recipe. So we haven't lost at all. We've almost gained an insight into a different preparation of stuff.
Yeah, and I think you're always gaining stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's fun. That's the creative side of things.
Definitely.
And generally it's me that puts the recipes through their paces as well. I just feel that's the hard thing I find to give away. I want to make the recipe and make sure it is it's foolproof. B, what are those critical control points in the recipe? I'm very methodical like that. I want to see what it looks like at every process. I also taste it at every process, which is strange as well, I think. But
you like the finer detail.
Yeah, I want to know what can go right, what can go wrong, and then that's how it makes it onto a menu. But again, people are like, well, you've got 13 menus throughout the year. How do you keep up with all the recipes and stuff? But these are 13 menus that have been 10 or 15 years in the making. People have got to remember that. Not every dish is brand new. Yeah. Some of them are just tweaked slightly from last year, or some of them are brand new. But it's not, we've probably got 150 dishes that we're doing, throughout the year.
Throughout the year, yeah, that's incredible.
But we just look at it like that's the weakest dish. Let's spend our energy making that one better. Do we make it better with the same flavour combination, or do we just scrap it and start again? And that's just being brutal with your products. But
and yourself.
Yeah, and also time. Things change, in terms of what's fashionable and what people are eating more of at the moment.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What would you say people are eating more?
I knew you were going to ask me this question. No, I've said it, but it's things like sugar, for example. It's when I started cooking, I've got recipes from 20 years ago, and I still keep the original. So whenever I adapt a recipe, I keep the original to see the change, the direction the recipe is going in, for example. And so lemon tart.
Yeah. Who doesn't love a lemon tart, right?
Exactly. But you'll be surprised to know our lemon tart now has 25% of the sugar in it that it did 20 years ago.
25% more?
25
less.
Just 25% of what? So 75% less.
75% less.
Yeah, and it still tastes sweet.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So the original recipe I thought was amazing. That was my favourite dessert, and I did it up recently, and I was like, whoa, how did we think that was normal? And it's literally just because if you've noticed in the supermarket, sugar's not being used as a preservative now. So sugar is coming out of all of our diets. It has been for the last 10 years.
Replace with it?
Probably salt or an unnatural product probably to do it. But I don't know if you remember the sugar tax was a big thing. It's to try and prevent obesity in this country. And our palates are a lot more savoury now. I don't know if you've noticed that. People are eating more savoury items than sweet items. But I was just, that's just one element of something that was really popular 20 years ago. The dish itself is still popular, lemon tart, but we've got to get that balance of we want it more sharp and sour rather than sweet, and tasting more of an actual lemon.
Than
sugar.
Just loads of sugar.
Yeah,
because there's the problem with sugar is it's just it's so addictive.
Try Pop-Tarts. Have you had Pop-Tarts recently?
Not recently, but a long time ago.
But they must have been back in the day,
just
the golden years, I call it. They must have been pure sugar. Yeah. Even now, there'd be 50% sugar, 50% sweetener or something in there.
Yeah.
And they still taste too sweet, probably.
I try and stay away from sugar if I can. Anyway, there's moments where I just
like us all,
indulge in it. But it's it's all.
But it was big. It was look at all our 90s food. It was in everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember there was times where I'd have headaches, and if I had a little bit of sugar, I'd start feeling better. I was like, no, I've got to have a break from this.
I used to love, I don't know why they don't do it, but I used to love those Lucozade tablets. Did you ever have those? Before football when I was young, it was a tablet form, and you literally spit in, and it It was just
like
it wasn't to go in water. It was like literally.
in your mouth.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I was saying to my son about it, like before football, I'd literally have a Lucozade Sport and then these tablets, and they're probably like too much sugar in them or something. That's why they've stopped it.
That's right.
But they just gave me so much energy.
Yeah. And to be honest, probably like energy you needed.
Yeah, God help my parents though. Like when I didn't have football, and I was still eating them. But
running around like
yeah.
So I mean, I feel like you've already answered it, but kind of like, what's next? What's next for you in your journey?
Yeah, so I think
I know you mentioned the pub. Is there anything else that you're?
a pub and a cookbook would be good. Yeah, I'd love to get a Michelin star as well, but I say it's out of my control. It's completely in my control, but it's not the focus.
How do you get an opportunity?
Great question.
Yeah, really. There's
I
no
think there's obviously there is a blueprint sort of thing. You know, like the chefs that are getting them at the moment have all worked with Michelin-starred chefs, and there's that Michelin
click. Is there a bit of a click?
Maybe a bit of a click, but also like I guess the produce that they're using, the way they're cooking. You know, there's nothing. I'm not being disrespectful to the chefs that've got it, but it's just the same with every accolade. If you worked your whole career in a Michelin star restaurant and then you go and open up your own restaurant, there's a high chance you're going to get a Michelin star because you've surrounded your whole recipe. All your recipes are Michelin starred, aren't they? So,
and is yours very tied in?
Well, like the only Michelin chefs I worked with is Raymond Blanc and Matt Gillen, but those recipes like that I did gain for those chefs, I've completely changed and kind of made into my own, and that's what I mean. We're on our own path. I think we will get one eventually, but it's not the end all and be all of the restaurant.
Yeah,
I think, like I said, I feel like we've got time on our side. We're still, I feel like the food that we're doing down at Etch is where I want it to be. When we first opened, I was like, you know what, we're doing simple food for my cooking. It was about 70% of where we wanted to be. And then over those last 6 years, we've been refining it and tweaking it. And now I'm so proud of the restaurant. The fact that I don't have to be there and I know the food's going to be good. That's not just coincidence. That's been years of preparation to get to that point.
And do you know what I really like about this conversation actually is you're very clear in your head about your identity of the brands, the values, like the consistency of it. And regardless of whether it's Michelin or not, like you're locked into this is what we are.
Yeah, it's our journey. I think that's really important that we have those values and we set them out at the beginning. I don't know whether it's values is the right word, but it probably should be written down somewhere, but it's more in my head. I know whether it's right or wrong. Does that make sense? I can literally look at it, taste it, and that's what the restaurant is. So we're sticking to that focus. Obviously, we tweak things, we change things up. We released a 4-course menu. We called it an introduction to Etch this year because of the cost of living crisis. So people could come to the restaurant for £50 per menu, and that's been a huge success. And you know what? I regret not doing that earlier because I think what I love about it is we're getting a new demographic of guests coming in, trying the food, and they're then coming back like...
The results are speaking for itself.
Yeah, they're coming back 6 months later and trying a slightly bigger menu or having a special occasion. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like an opportunity to see what we're about, but without spending, because our menus go up to £120 as the most premium. Probably average price is probably about 80 to £90 a menu, if you say before the year started. And then this year doing the £50 menu is real, like opened us out to a new crowd.
Good.
And I think it's a success. So that's one of those things that I said, it's not like a tick box or an ethos. Sometimes it's just like, actually, what do we want from the restaurant? We need to open ourselves up to a bigger audience because people are eating out less, but massive positive in doing that, and it makes me excited to be a chef, like to cook for more people. It's what it's about.
Outcome, yeah, that's it. That's incredible. And to be fair, like it's good that you've kind of broadened your horizon in that sense.
Yeah,
but no one kind of like gives you all the answers along this journey. You're generally you got to figure out a lot of things. Have you had much support externally, would you say, or is this just
so I've got a business partner called Steve as well.
No, two Steves.
And he's brilliant just because you've got two sides of a business. You've got the creative side, and then what you've got is the figures and the data behind it.
Yeah.
I've also got a guy called Paul who helps me, who's retired, and he's invaluable to the way like the business is running behind. And I've also got shareholders as well in that.
Okay.
So I can also dip into their knowledge and resources. But you just got to be careful like how many people you're asking questions to. So when you've got the creative side over here, that is fully me, potentially George and other chefs, but it's my vision and my drive of like where we want to take it.
Fair.
But ultimately though, the data that's coming out of the back of that needs to be right. You know, we're not an endless pit of money where like Man City or Chelsea at the moment, you know, as football clubs, you know, we have to be sustainable as a business. We have to be able to wash our face, and it would be nice to make a bit of money
of course,
at the end of it, like any business. We then use you know, Paul and Steve to help us streamline the business and make things like those decisions.
Well, generally there's answers in the data anyway.
Yeah.
It generally tells you what...
And that's what I love. And again, I know I keep
fun.
comparing it to football, but it's the same with football and statistics, isn't it?
It is.
You can look at the data. Sometimes the data is relevant. Sometimes it's completely irrelevant. It's got no rhyme or reason. You just have to discount that and focus on the data. But they can't read the data without me, which is fascinating, because they're like, well, this is showing this. I was like, well, there's a reason for that, you know. Like the second week of February, we had a spike because of Valentine's Day.
Exactly.
You know, so
and that's the kind of thing with that. It's even though the data might not show you exactly what you want to see, if you understand the context behind it, then that's good enough, right? But I think a lot of business owners, they don't look at the data, or they don't.
Yeah, I find that so strange, because the data is what's making us make decisions. So we stay like 4 months ahead. So we've released our January menu now. We've released our January bookings. We've made a slight change in the pricing structure and the courses. You know, we're looking at data that we've been given for like the last 9 months, and we made a decision, you know, obviously with the minimum wage going up next year as well, and projected electricity costs and running costs and all of that. We've made a decision to tweak what our offering and refine it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big part of the fact that you've got to kind of grow into these places. Yeah. Sometimes it takes something to go wrong for you to adjust and then start implementing the new data. But yeah, I think you know, even me, like I started off as a man in a van, so I weren't looking at any data. It was just getting out there and working.
But you probably didn't need to look at data. You could feel the data.
Really.
You know, when it's just you.
When it's small.
Because when the business was just me as well, I didn't need the data because I could feel it. You know, but when you've got, I mean, how many people are working for you at the moment?
Yeah. You know, we've definitely got a few, and now the data is fundamental in making sure that we protect the people, the kind of the business itself.
And the decisions become more important the more people you've got around you, because it's not just yourself. You know, you could probably go, like when I started off, I could probably go a couple of months without taking a salary or whatever.
100%. Yeah.
And now those decisions that I'm making are like, you know, we've got to be able to see, no one can predict the future, but we have to do our best at using the data that we've collected and kind of think, actually, where's the market moving? How can we change things up?
I mean, to be honest, like it weren't even a couple of months for me, because I probably spent about the first 18 months not taking out anything, because it was just too important
to invest it.
And when you're working all the time, the good thing about that is you're not really spending anything.
Yeah, no.
So I think,
mate, that's like one of my sayings. That's one of the things that like people laugh at. Would be like, well, you know, I'm getting star foods.
Yeah,
I've got a roof over my head. I'm working. So I'm like,
ideal scenario. Yeah, but I used to say that to myself when I was young. That, to be honest, I wanted to save. I wanted to buy my first property. And I just in my head said, well, if you just work more than you spend, then you're bound to have more than.
You're probably like me. Like when I was young, like you give me a week off, it was so dangerous because I just spend my whole pay packet. I'd just be like, why have I done this? Like, you know, I guess it's one of those things that if you're working hard all the time, you almost see it as like freedom sounds horrible, but like an opportunity to enjoy yourself. Do you know what I mean? And that's I've seen a lot of chefs like that, to be honest, that like they work hard then play hard, and that's dangerous. You know, like your pay packet does need to last more than a week.
Well, there's definitely an argument there, to be honest with you, because it's like, you know, while it's really good to, I think, build and like go towards a goal, it's also good to enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
I'm probably not the best example of that because I actually love building all the time.
Yeah.
Like, no pun intended,
Yeah.
but I like creating things. I like entrepreneurism. I like self-development, growth of myself. So therefore, when it comes to like just kind of wasting money in certain places, I'm not always about that.
But I think we said about it earlier, that reflection is really important though. You don't need to spend money to reflect and just enjoy a bit of that success, or like almost like reflect actually what's been going on the last couple of months. Actually, I really enjoyed that. And just sit back. Like, you don't have to, I agree, the older I get, you don't need to spend lots of money to feel that way.
No, because I think I think some people are just built different where they're like...
It's time rather than money. That's what it is. That's what I'm trying to say. It's time to yourself rather than money on yourself.
I think time is the biggest currency of it all, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, what you were mentioning earlier about if I, you know, do it all now, then it might hopefully frees up some time. And there's no guarantees.
No.
All I know is that, you know, sometimes when you're just doing an 8 to 5 job or a 9 to 5 job, is that you're locked into the systematic of most of the time you're going to be working for the next 30, 40, 50 years, unless you start being a bit dynamic.
But we're both in the physical industry. Like,
yeah.
And you've got that window of physicality. There's no point thinking, you know what, I'm going to do this after I have kids. I think it'd be really difficult to have that physical part of your career between 45 and 55, for example.
Impossible.
It'd be like you'd be waking up in the morning on a cold winter's day. I mean, my bones are already aching and I'm 37. God knows what I'll be like when I'm like in my mid-50s. Like,
my mum started a business at... I think she was about 50, maybe 57, 56. That's a late age to start a business. And maybe while you still got the energy there, it's okay. But I think...
But it depends what the business is. That's what I mean. If you're a chef, it's like it can be very, very physical, just like a builder can.
Ridiculously.
There's lots of businesses that you can set up, like when you're later on in life. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that physical side of it.
I think, you know, what I remember when I was in my mid-20s, I had lots of energy. And like... I would almost say late 20s would be like the ideal. Well, it was for me, put it that way. I was young enough where I had lots of energy, but wiser.
Mature. Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was completely there, but I was definitely wiser to be able to make the right decisions for the business. Because you can. You know, I think it's really important to go through that journey so you've got a responsible head on. And that's what I basically did. And how old were you when you started Etch?
So it was literally after one MasterChef, so 26, 27.
Yeah, I was the same age. Yeah.
I just felt, it was kind of though, I mean, I didn't even think about it, to be honest, but what started was I started doing events and dinner parties or working with different companies. It was just like, well, I need a company to put this income into. You know, it's something that wasn't taught to me, or... You know,
it was just like faith, and you And were you working for the company before MasterChef? Were you working?
So I was working at South Lodge Hotel. So I did another year with them. What was really nice is I didn't just want to like up sticks, because I think I said it earlier. Like those 5 years I had at South Lodge, like they really refined me as a chef.
Okay.
And you know, that's kind of like an important part of my career, and I didn't want to just like win the competition and be like, you know what, see you later, guys. So I said I'll stay there for another year, but they were really flexible with my working hours then, so we just changed it into a flexible working
environment.
So if I picked up jobs in other places, I was able to do that, and it was really nice with starting a business as well, where money and cash flow, it's hard to get the balance right.
100%.
And so I had that year of transition. Yeah, I had that transition, and then made the plunge fully at the start of 2015.
Yeah.
Was when then I was like,
it's incredible.
This is it now. Yeah, like I only got myself to rely on.
And touch wood, long may.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like every year you just look back, you're like, I can't believe it's been like that long. Like
time just goes really fast,
and
I think that's why it's important for us just to all enjoy ourselves in whatever way that looks like, to be fair. So,
but it also doesn't take long to become more established. You know, like when I started Etch in Brighton, there was like, you know, Brighton has a collection of restaurants already, and I think a few of them were like 4 or 5 years old, but you know, in my head they're like established, and now we're one of those established restaurants. It's, you know, 4 or 5 years to be an established business. It goes quickly.
It goes very quickly, yeah. And to be fair, it's normally on the 5 that kind of stint of the 5 year where it's like a little bit make or break.
Yeah,
Like if you've been doing it for 5 years and you're still not making money, and it's
you're on the edge, aren't you?
Yeah, you're pretty much on the edge. So it's really nice to see that you've kind of gone beyond that.
Well, we've gone through those challenges as well. That's what makes me most proud. You know, like things like COVID. Yeah. But
it builds
like
confidence. It builds a level of confidence towards yourself, because you're like, we've already survived this.
Yes.
So
that's the feeling I get, and you're learning so much from those decisions that you're making. And I don't think I'd want it smooth sailing. You know, like if I look back with it, I'd be like, if it had been like that smooth sailing, and then it goes into like a volatile environment, I might struggle a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you don't get to enjoy the good times if you don't really know what the bad times look like.
100%.
And I think that's the thing in business. But you know, it's important to have that kind of level head on along the journey. You don't want to be too volatile with it. You know, when I was younger, I was a bit like up and down. But I think as I've got older, I've kind of like leveled off a little bit better at times. Don't get me wrong, there are, you know, times where I zoom in too much, and sometimes you just got to zoom out. But I've got good people around me, you know, and I think...
Oh, yeah, I have as well.
Like what you explained.
I smile like when you say that, because like my head chef, George, he's like exactly how I was at first. He was 30 this year, which is a big milestone for him. But his decision-making can be a little bit like volatile, which is completely normal at that age.
Sometimes
and it's me,
sometimes
you know, like sometimes I think he thinks I react a little bit slow to stuff, but generally my experience tells me, you know what, take a step back, let's analyse it a little bit more. Whereas I think,
and do you know what's really interesting about that? And we were talking about this before, is that you need a balance of people in your business.
Yeah.
If everyone is too much of the same, either if you're too slow and being too analytical, you don't get things done. But if you're too getting things done, then sometimes you can create a mess and not quite think about what you're doing, sort of thing. So it's really fundamental.
You need balance, 100%. Like me and George are like complete opposites,
Yeah,
but still with the same ethos, which is
is
important. We complement each other really well.
That's good.
Obviously, it can lead to arguments and discussions and conflict, but that's all normal. I think we've got to be.
You're the boss.
Well, no, but I never play that. Well, he'd probably say I do play that card, but I try not to play that card because I want.
I know.
I want that. It's not the relationship between me and George isn't you do as I say.
Yeah, no, of course.
Because we're never going to get to where we want to be with that sort of attitude. I believe. So
everyone needs to be kind of like bought in together into what's happening. So you can't just, if it's like you're a dictator and you're just, it's not like that at all.
He does use words sometimes like me and Joe, like his sous chef. Me and Joe have decided like this. I'm like, oh God.
Just to like,
I'm like, so here we go. How am I going to negotiate this conversation? I start looking for other chefs in the kitchen, like, right, who's going to join my side?
Yeah, that's right.
But then they all work underneath George, so I'm like screwed in that aspect as well.
Do you know what? I think as long as everything that's being done is for the best of
the business,
you know, bigger picture. Because sometimes, you know, I think we just have to, we as owners and, you know, probably need to just be that bit open-minded that we're not going to have every single answer. You know? And the idea of having a good team around us is also to have to utilise them, innovate and have different ideas. So. No, it sounds like it's all going really well for you.
No, it is, and I'm loving the challenge of doing it. I think, you know, there's such a big difference between being a business owner and working for someone. And I think, like, I've never. A lot of people say it, but I can't see myself going back to that way of life. I enjoyed it because I learnt a lot, but for me, it's a massive eye opener, and it's scary. It's a challenge. Not every day is the same, and I love that.
Yeah. I think the shell shock is finding out that you don't just cook foods or you don't just do something specific. The shell shock is you have to do a lot of everything.
Yeah, and that's one of the worries that I did have, like when I started having a business. I didn't want to be like a jack of all trades sort of thing. But to be honest, I'm just excited about learning. Like I'm still learning about food, and that's where I've made my name. But also in the business side of things, it's like, wow, there's so much to learn, and more to learn.
Yeah.
But I do feel like I'm set up to make like decisions.
Yeah. No, to be honest, it sounds really exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing where your journey goes next, Steve.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is thank you for coming down today.
No, absolute pleasure as always.
And I look forward to seeing you on your next endeavour.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Steve.
Cheers.